Hey robot makers, hope you're having a good day so far. So do you want to know about how to use MicroPython using some old Lego Mindstorms hubs? Do you want to learn more about Pybricks? Then this is the show for you. So let's dive straight in. My name's Kevin. Come with me as we build robots, bring them to life with code, and have a whole load of fun along the way. Okay, let me just turn down that for a second. Okay, so let's go over to our keynote. And yes, today is all about Pybricks. So I don't know how many of you have heard of Pybricks before. I recently discovered this and it is just awesome. So we're going to have a look at Pybricks. We're going to have a bit of a play with it as a demo later on as well. We're going to have a look at some of the overview and features. We're going to have a look at the evolution of the Mindstorms ecosystem. And we're going to show you how to get started with Pybricks. And we're going to build a self-balancing robot as a demo as well, and we'll get onto more of that in a minute. Okay, so a brief history of Lego Mindstorms. So Lego Mindstorms has been around for quite a long time, over 2 decades. So started in 1998 with the release of the RCX, which is a little hub, a little box that you can plug all kinds of robotics components into that Lego provide. And then almost 10 years later, the NXT, the Next, was launched. And then it was about another 10 years and the EV3 was launched. I think this is one of the more popular ones. And then in 2016, they had the Power Up. And the Power Up is like a smaller version of the hub, and it's kind of designed for other projects that might not necessarily be robots focused. So there's a lot of other hubs you'll see there that are also launched. So we had the 2019 we had the Move Hub, followed by the Technic Hub, followed by the Essentials Hub, and we also had the Spike and Robot Inventor Hub launched as well in 2020. Pybricks came out around 2021, and almost as if the timelines had sort of coincided for some bizarre reason. We'll maybe speculate on why that will be in a minute. Lego decided to cancel Mindstorms, so they no longer develop Mindstorms. The whole ecosystem is kind of paused. I think they're going to continue the support for the software, maybe do a few bug fixes here and there, but no new kits, no new development in that area. So why do we think that is? I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on that in the comments, whether you're watching live or on replay. So let's have a look at this in a bit more detail. So like I said, in 1998, there was a collaboration between Lego Group and MIT Media Lab, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and they created an accessible educational robotics platform for children and hobbyists. And the first iteration of this was the RCX, the programmable brick as they called it, or the Robotics Invention System. And this, according to the blurb, this revolutionized the world of consumer robotics, allowing users to build, program, and control their own robots using Lego and specialized components. So I've got some of the specialized components on my desk here. So this, for example, is a little motor, and it has a cable that you plug into the hub. This little cable connector, it's got quite a few ribbons on it. I think there's about 6 or 7 cables on there, and that provides some feedback so we can get really accurate positioning as well as providing power and controlling the motor. So we had some further releases over the next 2 decades, introducing new hardware, new sensors, new motors, and new programming environments and capabilities. So we had the NXT, like I said, in 2006, 2013 we had the EV3, and then we had the Robot Inventor Kit in 2020, or the Spike Kit, I think that's also known as, or Prime. Then we had the Lego Mindstorms competition. So they inspired all kinds of numerous competitions, such as the first Lego League, where students around the world would showcase their engineering and programming skills by designing, building and programming robots to complete specific challenges, a bit like we have with Pi Wars for doing building robots and solving challenges. So the versatility and popularity of this Lego Mindstorms have led to the development of alternative programming environments and alternative firmware, such as Pybricks. So we're going to have a look at this in a minute. So Lego Mindstorms has gone through, like we said, quite a few iterations. These are the major hubs. There are some other ones like the Essentials and the Move and the City and the Technic, but these are the main ones. So you can see there they've got, some of them have a display, some of them just have LED pixels. So this one has like a 5x5. If I just quickly switch this on, you might be able to see if I just hold my hand there. There's a little grid of RGB LED pixels. I think they're just white pixels on this particular one. Some of them have like a segmented display, some of them have like pixel displays and so on. So you can see all the different iterations of that there. And then processor wise, the very first one, the RCX, is quite similar to like an Arduino Uno spec. So an Arduino Uno is like 16 megahertz. This one is 10 megahertz, so a little bit slower there. This one's got 512k of RAM, so quite a bit of RAM compared to the Arduino. And it had 16k of ROM, read-onable memory, no USB, no Wi-Fi, no Bluetooth, and it couldn't connect to any Apple devices. Next, we have the Next, and that had 64k of RAM. That was running on a 48 megahertz Atmel AT91 SAM S256 chip. This one did have Bluetooth, and I think all the rest of them have Bluetooth from this part onwards. And then the EV3 was quite a big jump forward. That's got the 300 megahertz, so we've leaped quite a bit there, an order of magnitude. We've got a bit more flash memory on this one, and this one also has the USB port on it as well, and optionally a Wi-Fi dongle as well, so you can connect over Wi-Fi. It has Bluetooth, and that one can connect to Apple devices. And what we mean by that is the Bluetooth version is like BLE, Bluetooth low power edition. And then finally the last released one, the Inventor or Spike Prime. This one had a 100 megahertz processor, and it had 320k of RAM, so a bit like an ESP32 or possibly a Pico, more than twice the RAM of a Pico. And it also had a mega flash. So this one had a USB port on it, didn't have Wi-Fi, but does have Bluetooth and can connect to Apple devices as well. So a bit of a detailed spec there. So we talked about Lego cancelling Mindstorms in 2022, was it? Which seemed insane. I was quite disheartened when I heard about this. So where do Lego Mindstorm users go now then? They've got all this hardware that they've paid quite a bit of money for, and I suspect that's one of the reasons, that's what I would speculate as to why Mindstorms hasn't been continued. It's quite an expensive platform to support from a technical point of view. And also, so unlike a regular Lego kit where they can sort of plastic injection mold the bricks and then they sell it and then that's pretty much it. Whereas with something that's like an electronics high tech, they need to make sure that the software is always up to date. And you know, that's after that initial investment and the customers paid that block of money, they still have to invest and continue supporting it after that point. So there's a kind of overhead that maybe they weren't used to. And then also, there is the cost to the consumer. So when we buy one of these kits, I've got my Lego Mindstorms kit up there. So if I look up there, that's why. They're about £200 or £300, so they're not cheap at all. So if you're like a college or school and you want to buy one of these kits for your students, for one kit, £300 is a lot of money. So, you know, if you want to buy 20 kits so you can have a classroom full, you're talking a couple of £1,000s there. So I think that's one of the reasons why they discontinued it, just because they couldn't make it for a price point that was affordable for education, which is its main customer, as well as hobbyists like us. So where does that leave these Mindstorm users now? So enter Pybricks. I love Pybricks. I've only recently discovered this. I think Andy Piper mentioned it on Twitter, and I was like, I've got to dive into this. So Pybricks is an open source firmware for Lego Mindstorms Hubs. So essentially you can take your official Lego Mindstorms Hub, I've got one here which is the Inventor, and you can wipe the firmware that's on this and put on some custom firmware, some open source firmware that runs MicroPython. So we get all the benefits of MicroPython, something that we love from our Raspberry Pi Picos, our ASP32s and so on. And we've also got the benefit of having these really advanced, so these motors and these sensors are actually quite advanced. There's a lot of capability in these that you don't find in the cheap motors. So this is something that we can now leverage with MicroPython. You could use Python before in the latest Robots one, the Robot Inventor kit, but this is MicroPython. It's more tuned for the processor, and I believe it's a lot faster as well. So that means it's flexibility, we can customize it, and there's an active community with support as well. And the documentation is chef kiss. It is absolutely amazing. We'll have a look at some of that shortly. And it supports the EV3, the Power Up, the Spike Inventor as well. So the team behind Pybricks, we have Lawrence Volk and we have David Lechner. Hope I pronounced your names correctly there. And they're the core team of people that developed this. Part of the MicroPython group as well. I know David is a big user of that. And I believe the reason Andy had suggested I look into Pybricks is because there was a demo at the latest meetup where they demoed a self-balancing robot, which is what I've got on my desk over here. So we're going to have a play with the code that pretty much David's written. I think I've changed one variable in it to make it slightly different, but that's pretty much it. So yeah, they're the guys behind Pybricks, and they've got a real aesthetic as well. If you go to the website, which we'll have a look at in a minute, it's really quite nice. So how we get started with this, so we need to check compatibility with our hub. So if you've got one of these 6 types of hub, you can play with and I think there's actually a few more supported actually. There's the EV3 and the Next as well, just not the very first one. So yeah, you can see a couple of the other ones on screen there. We've got the City Hub, the Technic Hub, which is obviously designed for more Lego Technic kits. We have the Move Hub. I believe my R2D2 robot has a Move Hub in it, so this one has it sort of sticking at the bottom just there, and that allows it to have some regular kind of Lego Mindstorms motors in it, a couple of sensors. So there's I think there's a light sensor or something in here. Yeah, there it is, like a color sensor, so it can detect like colored objects and so on. So that one's quite a fun one I got a while ago. Little R2D2 there. So yes, so check compatibility. Have you got one of these devices? If you have, you can play. If you then go to the Pybricks official website, pybricks.com, you can then follow the very, very simple process. If I can do it, anyone can do this. So updating the firmware seems a bit scary at first because you think, you're going to wipe the original firmware, but don't worry, they've made it so easy to restore the original firmware as well. So you can always go backwards if you're worried about that. If you have the EV3, there is a Pybricks installer, which is available on the website, and the Power Up and the Robot Inventor, very, very easy to do. You can just do this over Bluetooth, so very, very simple indeed. We'll have a play with that after I've shown you the demo. I'll show you how to load the firmware. So the process is you connect the hardware by turning it on and then putting it into Bluetooth mode. On this particular one, I would plug in the cable via this USB socket here whilst holding down the main sort of button there, and it will then start flashing a sort of pink and orange colour, I think, and that means it's sort of ready to flash, a bit like when you hold down the boot select button and put the power into like a Raspberry Pi Pico. So once it's in that ready to receive mode, you can then connect, you can then upload the firmware, and then you've got that click connect button to sort of connect to the Bluetooth from your browser. So your browser might pop up and say this device wants to connect, and you can click accept, and I think it just says Pybricks as the device that wants to connect over Bluetooth. And it's as simple as that. You can then get on, start writing your programs. So we will have a play with this very, very shortly. So this is the web editor that they have provided. So if you go to code.pybricks.com, they've got an integrated editor, so you can start editing code, and it's a really good editor. It's got code autocomplete, things like that on it. But most importantly, it's very easy to connect to your device and run the code and stop it and so on. So I love the simplicity of this. The coding with Pybricks then, you can also just use the REPL if you want to just break out into the command line. There's a little terminal at the bottom and you can just break out to that and run your code as you would on any MicroPython device. And you can also access all of the sensors that are built into the hub itself. So even if you don't connect any motors up or the color sensors or the tilt sensors, you can read all the IMU data, or the X and Y gyroscope type stuff. You've got all that kind of built into the hub itself. So depending which hub you've got different features on there. We're going to have a look at the documentation and just see some information about that shortly. So there is so many different types of sensors and motors and actuators that you can get for this sort of Mindstorms ecosystem, and obviously it's developed over 20 years, so there's an awful lot in there. I was quite surprised to learn you can use the remote control. So I've got a Lego some kind of robot that can tip upside down. I can't remember what it's called, but I got this at Christmas, and this one has that little remote control there, the little Bluetooth remote, and you can program the remote and you can program the robot to receive those Bluetooth commands and respond to it. So that one has like the IMU built in, and I'm not sure what the hub is on that one. I'll have to check, but it'd be one of those, probably the move hub. But we've got things like color sensors, distance sensors, which is it's like a more advanced version, if you look here, of the rangefinder that we typically use on a lot of our projects. So it's got the sort of send and receive ultrasound, but it's also got some LEDs above and below each of them, almost like eyes, like eyebrows, eyelids. So I absolutely love that. And you can actually plug these into any of the connectors, so all the connectors are sort of interchangeable. I'll just go to the overhead just in case you've not seen these before. Let me just move the mic there. So there's the hub. This is the Robot Inventor. Let me just get that to focus. Come on. There we go. And then if I plug that into, say, the F socket there, then it will know where to respond to that. Let me make sure I've got it into the right one, otherwise this won't work later on for the demo. There we go. But yeah, there's 6 connectors, 3 on each side, and we've got the main button there. There's like a left and right, and there's a Bluetooth button there, as well as that's not a button there. So yeah, and then the battery is just a LiPo battery. If I just pull this out, see if I can get this to come out live on air, which is never easy, a good thing to do. I'll do it without fighting gravity. But yeah, this is essentially like a LiPo battery. Why won't that come out? Have I done something to that? I think I might have it ever so slightly covered. There we go, that's why. There we go. So there's like a chunky LiPo battery. What does it say that is? I'm trying to see how many mAh. So it's 2160 mAh. So it is pretty chunky battery. And I've got that one charged up and ready to go. We just plug that back in there. I made a really crude robot for this demonstration, so there's not too much to it really. And this one also has the color sensor on the bottom as well. I think it's a color / reflection. It can detect reflections, and we can use that. Go back to there. We can use that sensor to detect and follow a line as well, so it can detect like black and white. So that's some of the sensors and some of the motors that I've got in front of me here, but there's a whole bunch of other ones. And like I said, I was really surprised to learn that you can have Lego trains as well. So the one on the bottom right is from like a Lego train set, so you can control them with Pybricks as well, which is so cool. Okay. So first class documentation. So one of the things that makes any project stand out is when somebody spent a lot of time making the documentation really good. So for each class that's in the Pybricks library, there's some really detailed instructions about how to use it, what kind of arguments it takes, what it does, what it returns, and then an example piece of code. So this is perfect. So if you wanted to quickly just understand how something works, like the tilt sensor, for example, then you can just go over to docs.pybricks.com, find the component you're interested in, and then learn how to use it. So couldn't be simpler. Absolutely love this. So if you want to learn MicroPython, if you've not dived into this yet, then you can go over to kevsrobots.com/learn/, and then there's a whole series of different courses you can take for free for things like MicroPython, ROS, Python, and how to build robots. Robotics 101 I've got on there as well. There's more being added all the time. So I wanted to, just before we get into how to build a self-balancing robot, I wanted to touch on this lightly today, so don't worry if you don't understand this, but it's one of the principles that makes this whole robot work. So PID controllers are a type of algorithm that enables the robot to stand upright on 2 wheels. So if you think about the physics of this robot is wanting to fall backwards or forwards, and we've got some motors that can counter that. And inside the hub there's an IMU, an inertial measurement unit, that can measure the sort of where the orientation of the robot, its pose, and whether it's leaning backwards or forwards. We can also do side to side and pitch and yaw and roll, all those kinds of things, but really we're just interested in the sort of forward and backwards motion of the robot. And then we want to have some algorithm that will be able to counter that by turning the motors in the opposite direction. But we also wanted to make the robot so that we can turn it and we can make it move backwards and forwards whilst it's also balancing itself. So a PID controller is an algorithm that helps us do exactly that. So there are 3 parts of PID. PID stands for proportional, integral, and derivative. So the proportional control is based on the error between the set point and the actual process variable. So what we mean by that is, if our set point is that we want the robot to stay upright and the error is that it's tilting, that angle, that value is the error. So we want to be able to correct that and make it so that it stays upright. So it's a linear response, meaning that the control output is directional proportionate to that error. So it's going to be related to it one-to-one. The integral control is the error between the set point and the actual process variable. So it calculates the integral of the error between the actual process and the set point. And this provides us a way to eliminate the steady state. So rather than this trying to fight it, what you'll get if you try and fight that in a linear fashion is that it'll wobble a lot, or it'll just go over completely because we haven't factored in things like time or the amount of fall that's happening. Because if you think if something's going to fall, it's going to fall and then go faster. So we want to have some kind of real-time control over that. So the integral is the first part. That's going to look at the integral of the error between the set point and the actual variable where it is now. And then we've got the derivative control, which is the rate of change between the error and the set point. So how fast is it falling? And that enables us to respond very quickly because we can sort of dial up or down the amount of change that we want. So if we get this PID values correct, our robot will be quite stable and won't sort of wobble. Now I haven't dialed this in, so let's see what happens in a minute when we run this for real. So just wanted to show you that. If you want to see this as like an algorithm visually, this is what this looks like as well. So you've got the PID there as well. So don't worry about this if you don't do maths. It's an algorithm. It's just a black box. We can put values in. We can tweak those 3 values to get what we really want, which is a nice stable robot. So let's have a play, shall we? Let me get over to... Now I'm going to do this... first of all, I'll try it on the overhead just here. But it's not very much runway for this, so I've cleared the other desk so that we can I can basically just spin this other camera around. If I go to here for a second, I can move our R2 out the way. We've got a nice long run over there where we can put this robot, but I'll just stand it up on the this main camera for now. And what I will do is I will show you the code that we want to run. So let me get over to, let me find it, the Pybricks code. What I've done is I've already loaded up the Pybricks code from the website, and I've uploaded the link in the description of this video if you want to get this code. There's also on kevsrobots.com. If you go to kevsrobots.com/blog/Pybricks, I think there's an article that should be live now on that. So here's the code. We'll go through the code in a minute, but I want to show you it first. I think that'll be more fun. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to power it up. So I'll do that by holding that there, and you can see the lights have come on. So at the moment it's not standing up or anything because I'm not connected to it. So I need to click the Bluetooth button. That says, will you like to pair with the Pybricks hub? I'm going to click to pair. And once that's done now, we've got the symbol there, which means it's paired. And if I now click run, it's now going to try and balance itself. Now you can't see at the moment what it's doing, so I'm going to move this about a little bit. There we go. So it's trying to balance itself. Now, it's not a very good demo, that, so what I want to do is I want to just show you it on this longer run. So let me put it here like so. And if I just move the microphone there we go. So you can see it's kind of balancing backwards and forwards a bit, but then it's got a bit of a judder. And that judder is because the PID hasn't been optimized correctly. So I haven't changed any of the values on there. Let's go and have a look at some of the code and see how all this actually works. It's pretty simple. So we're inside the Pybricks code editor, code.pybricks.com. I've created this at balancing.py. You simply just click on the plus button to create a new file, and then we can just put some code in there. So we have pybricks.hub, so Pybricks is the main library, and then there's all these separate little sub components to it. So the hub is the actual device that you connect all the cables into. In this case, we're using the Inventor hub. Now these power up devices are the actual motors, the controller. So this is a PUP, a device. This is a motor, and I'm using the color sensor and also the motor. So just 2 sensors. Well, 1 sensor, which is the color sensor. So I'm actually not using the distance sensor at all. That isn't actually plugged in or it is plugged in, but it's not actually being used. Then we've got Pybricks parameters, so the port and direction is how we can set the which port we're connected into, one of the 6 different connectors on there. And what I think is quite neat is these cables, the port that you connect them into, that shape is the shape of the, if I can get that on camera. Let me see if I can get that on camera there. The Pybricks logo is basically that port shape. Oops, there we go. That port shape just there is their logo. So I think that's pretty neat. Right, let's get back over to there. Let me plug that back in for now. Okay, so next we have Pybricks tools. So we've got wait and stopwatch. These are just 2 timer functions that are built in there, built into the hub's hardware. Otherwise, we could just do that in regular sleep and time for MicroPython. And then we've got geometry. Geometry is the built-in IMU, which helps us get things like the tilt, you know, how much this is falling forward. So axis is what that's called there. So the next thing we do is initialize the motors. So we've got left and right motors. They're a motor class which it's bringing in from the Pybricks PUP devices up there. It's plugged into port C and port D. And we've had to change the direction of one of the motors because they're facing opposite directions, and that means that they're not turning in the sort of same orientation. So one of them has to be counterclockwise. And then we have the left reset angle and right reset angle. So what that will do is when we start off with our robot up like that, we press the button to start it like so. You can't see anything, which is why it's spinning off like that, but that will essentially say upright is 0. If we did it at a slight angle, that would be 0 too, and it would try and maintain that. Okay, so next up we have initializing the color sensor and the hub itself. So hub equals inventor hub, sensor equals color sensor, connected to port A. And the ports are all labeled A, B, C, D, E on the front, so it makes it very easy to figure that out. I'm pretty sure on the official version of the firmware for these hubs, you can plug them into any, and the hub will figure out what is connected to each of the ports. And each of these things has its own firmware, which is insane. So there's a chip in there with some flash RAM that can have its firmware upgraded. Because when you plug these into the official firmware, sometimes it says these need flashing and upgrading, which is just crazy. But they are pretty advanced. Okay, so next bit is the setting up some of the PID stuff. So this DT is kind of the how many times per second we are going to have a loop. So we can change that value there, DT. I'm not sure what the D stands for, but a better variable name will be something like loop process. Then we have the window, which is the an integer of, I mean, what you could do there instead of integer, you could just do 2 of them like that. That will give you the integer. Let's change that to make that read a bit better, like so. And then we've got a buffer, and the first element of the buffer is times by window, which we've defined up there. We've got an index, we've got an angle, we've got a drive speed, and we've got a pause, which is 5,000, which I think is like 5 seconds. Then we've got a timer, so we say watch equals stopwatch, and then we've got the main loop here, which does all the work. So the rate is the hub.imu angular velocity, which is axis Y, and then the angle is whatever the angle is plus the rate times the process time, how many times we check this, divided by 1,000. We then get the motor position by saying position equals left angle plus right angle divided by 2, and that will give us the position of the motors. And then we have the motor speed being calculated, so we say speed equals the position minus the buffer index divided by the window times the process loop times 1,000. That's pretty esoteric. I think if I was to write this, I would probably make some of these things like buffer index and DT proper named so that we could understand them a little bit better. And then we say buffer index equals position, and then we say index equals index plus 1, and that is it the modulus of the window? So that should then give us the index that we need, and then we calculate the reference position, which grows linearly with time. So reference equals minus max watch time minus pause. And max will basically just give us the largest value in there. And then 0, I think, is just how many decimal points, I think, divided by 1,000 times the drive speed. And then we have the duty cycle, so diff equals position minus reference, and then the duty is 0.018. So these values here are PID values that we should be able to tweak. So they've hard coded them in there. So there's an angle plus 0.5 times diff 0.16 times speed. So that's kind of our PID calculation going on there. And then the duty is times equal, so duty times duty times 720 divided by the hub voltage, battery voltage. So you can actually get the voltage of the battery. We can do that down here in a minute. We can connect to our robot, and we can basically just go into the terminal. I think is it that button there. So if we do that, if we say hub, let's do import. Let me just grab that from the top there. So just grab that code there. Let's paste that in, and then just say hub equals inventor hub, like so. And then if we do hub dot battery dot voltage, voltage, there we go. So that's the current voltage of the battery, 7965. So it's pretty full. We did charge it up before the show. And then the reflection is, so this little color sensor can actually measure the reflectivity of things in front of it. So you can see on the camera there, you can see that flickering, and that's as it's detecting what's underneath it. So we can actually get the reflection coming back, and then we can adjust the steering based on that. So we can say steering equals reflection minus 28 times 0.6. And again, these values are values that somebody who has designed this knows what they are, and I haven't done this myself. That was just me cheating before. And then we'll look at the left and the right duty cycle for each of the for the motors, and then we can say duty plus steering and duty minus steering for the left and the right. And then we wait for some time. So that DT is that sort of process cycle. So again, if we put this on and just have another quick demo of this. So if I go back over to, let's see, that camera there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put the robot, let's put it like so. And if I just press the button on the front, it'll run the code, he says. Let me go back out of there. If I press play on there. There we go. Let's just try to manhandle it a bit. Because the values are not dialed in. Because the values are not dialed in, you get that kind of shudder effect going on. One last time. So some experiments I did with this robot, let me just grab that off there. Some of these experiments I did with this, I started out with having this really tall, so these legs were actually underneath here, and it would wobble like crazy. And that's because the angle that it's expecting to pivot at isn't what the person who wrote this particular PID controller had factored in. So we would need to change those values to get this to sort of work optimally. So that's something I want to look at. I want to build my own balancing robot. So I've started with a little base here. So it's got two motors, and these motors, similar to the robot we've got here, have feedback. So as well as having the power left and right, they also have how many control counts the wheel has done, so we can get some feedback. And that's basically going to run on a Raspberry Pi Zero with a motor shield on the top. Okay, so let's get back over to our keynote. So if you haven't joined me on Discord, you can jump over there now if you like. Excuse me, we have a nice easy link for you. So if you go to kezrobots.com/Discord, you'll get a sign up link there, and you can join our group of people over on our Discord server. And if you're not following me on social media, help me grow my channel on all the different platforms. So I'm not just relying on any one platform, because they all seem to be being hit quite a bit recently. So there's quite a lot of change at the moment on Twitter. I am a Twitter Blue subscriber through my business, so I'm able to sort of maintain that. And I believe that the algorithm has been changed so that if you don't have that blue tick, I don't think you appear in, or your tweets don't get promoted as much as people who have got the blue tick. So it's a bit of a two-tier system going on there, but it is what it is. I'm also on Mastodon Social, so if you go to Kev's Mac at Mastodon Social, you can find me there. I'm at Kev's Mac on Twitter. I'm at Kevin McAleer on Instagram, and I'm Kevin McAleer 6 on TikTok, because there must be 5 other Kevin McAleers on there, all doing robot content, I'm sure. And you want to help support the show, and a number of people have. Some mysterious person bought me a coffee today, so thank you very much for the person that did that. They did email me about some information about Bubo, which is the robot I've got at the back of the room just there. So if you want to do a super thanks, you can do that just by clicking on the thanks button beneath the YouTube window, and that will help support the channel. If you do a super chat, if you're watching live now, we will we'll get those through, and I shall make sure we have stream elements switched on there as well so that we can see that. And if you want to buy me a physical coffee, you can go over to kevsrobots.com/coffee. I am a coffee drinker. I do like to have the Lavazza every morning to wake me up. And if you want to join the YouTube membership program, you can do that too, just by clicking the join button underneath the main viewer window. Cool. And I think we have one last slide on there to go through. Yes, our supporters, of course. So there's a number of people who are supporting the channel. I want to give them a shout out for being really generous and kind and helping me sustain the channel just a little bit longer. So we've got Maureen, we have Victor, we have Roland, we've got Marcus, we've got Bron, we have Carol, we have Marlene, John, Tom, Keith, Shemi and Steve. And then YouTube members, we have Carol, we have Jose, we have Dale, we have Skipper Banks, Jeff Ford, W. Peabody, Bill Hoy, got Hans from Cheerlights. I did a Cheerlights read just before the show. We have Michael, we have Fraser, we have John Paul, and we have Tom as well. So thank you so much for supporting the show. If you want to get your name in these credits, then go over to kevsrobots.com/credits, and it's essentially a link to the previous slide that shows you how you can help support the show. And any way that you show your support, you'll get notified on here as well. Okay, I think that's everything I've got for you today on the this recorded part of the show. So if you've been watching this, let me know what you think about Lego Mindstorms being discontinued, and let me know if you're going to take a look at Pybricks as well, because I'd be really keen to know more people who are using that. So this is the part of the video. If you're watching on replay, I'll say thank you so much for watching, and I shall see you next time.